So it's no secret that the Marvel Cinematic Universe hasn't been the same since Avengers Endgame. In the 4 years since Endgame, this once beloved franchise has honestly had one of the biggest bag fumbles in recent pop culture history. I mean, how does a franchise go from making iconic jaw-dropping masterpieces like Iron Man, 2012 Avengers, Captain America the Winter Soldier, and the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, to then making big flops like Thor Love and Thunder, Black Widow, The Marvels, She-Hulk, and Eternals? I mean, honestly, what happened? Some people might say this is due to superhero movie fatigue, but I think that is so far from the truth. I think this is one, due to bad superhero movies being made, but I also think it's due to the lack of character development. One of my favorite scenes from all of the Infinity Saga is the party scene in Age of Ultron. I would genuinely watch a movie about these characters just going out to dinner or going to a party and just talking and joking the entire time. This is because of the way the characters are written and the development us, the audience, were able to watch over the course of multiple movies. We, the audience, have gone on multiple journeys with these characters and have grown attached to them. If you've watched any of my previous videos, then it's very, very obvious that I'm a superhero fan. But I myself have been turned off by the MCU. I haven't seen a handful of recent MCU projects because I honestly really don't care anymore, and that breaks my heart. That's sad. Now, this isn't going to be a video of me ripping into the decline of the franchise like countless other YouTube videos. Instead, I want to take a look back and analyze these projects that were post-Endgame and talk about what I would do differently if I was put in charge of Marvel and I had to save the franchise. So let's get into what I would do if I had to save the MCU. Looking back at its peak, the MCU was able to drop any movie, and all you had to do to get butts in the seat would say, "Oh, it's a Marvel movie," and then instantly you would have a packed-out theater on opening night. One of the reasons that I believe this was able to work is because everything in the franchise was connected. For instance, maybe you weren't a fan or didn't even know who Ant-Man was, but you did know that Ant-Man's movie leads straight into Civil War, and you were a huge Captain America fan, so that would then entice you to go see Ant-Man's movie. Because of this, Ant-Man's movie would then get more ticket sales than it ever would if it was just a standalone Ant-Man movie outside of the franchise. From a business perspective, this is perfect marketing because after enough movies, the audience will blindly go into new Marvel movies. They will learn to expect a certain standard of quality from the MCU, which will lead to more butts in seats and overall ticket sales for the franchise. And I mean, this clearly worked. So, post-Endgame, what has the MCU done? Well, let's go take a look back at Phase 4. And besides the overwhelming amount of content in Phase 4, what I believe the biggest gripe that I've seen regarding Phase 4 and 5 is the lack of connectivity. One of the early projects in Phase 4 was the Eternals, and I was really excited for this movie, but this movie flopped big time, and at the end of the movie, we see a huge celestial erected from the ocean, and it becomes this whole statue for the world to see. What I thought they were going to do with this was make a Justice League-style watchtower inside the celestial for all the Avengers to use as a hub, and I really think that would be a cool idea. Instead, in the 2 years since the movie's release, to my knowledge, there has been zero acknowledgement of the events of this movie inside the universe. And in my opinion, this is a huge mistake in trying to maintain or build the cinematic universe. In my opinion, one of the things that made the MCU work in the past is it felt like every movie mattered and every event inside that movie was important. Instead, in the years following Endgame, we have had many massive events in this universe that felt like there was no overall impact to the MCU as a whole, no matter the size of the event. Don't believe me? Well, for example, Moon Knight introduces Egyptian gods into the universe and even shows Moon Knight changing the night sky like a kaleidoscope. Or the introduction of a new Captain America backed by the US government shows the guy getting beheaded live on television with the Captain America shield. We also can't forget about Rhodey being a Skrull or Kang in the quantum realm. There are so many empty threads left behind and that have never been thought of again. I think the biggest mistake in Phase 4 and 5 is not allowing any of their projects to connect or even matter in the overall universe. To me, it's like there's 15 different storylines all happening at once, and each one is supposed to be the biggest and most important event ever. But then there's a huge lack of importance to the audience with these projects. From what I've seen, almost every trailer says that this current thing is the most important thing since Avengers Endgame, and it's going to break the universe. I mean, look at the trailers for the Marvel, where they literally show black and white clips from Avengers Endgame to try and manipulate the audience's emotions to go see the film, because they know that no one cares about this film. No one cares about the Marvels because there's been no character development, and the studio knows this movie's gonna flop. And it did. You don't believe me? Well, here, let me show you the numbers for this movie, and they'll speak for themselves. So what would I do if I was in charge of the MCU? Well, first off, let's look at one thing that is very obvious that the MCU has been trying to push, and that is the introduction of their new Young Avengers, or just the protege of our older Avengers. Examples of this are Kate Bishop, Cassie Lang, Thor's daughter Love, Shang-Chi, Riri Williams Ironheart, Shuri's Black Panther, Yelena's Black Widow, or whatever she's called, Wanda's kids, Miss Marvel, Hulk's son, and American Chavez. This seems to be the new list of characters that we will be following for the foreseeable future, along with pre-existing characters like Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and Sam Wilson's Captain America. And honestly, I think the introduction of these new characters is a great way to go moving forward, especially after retiring or killing off the majority of our legacy characters. But the way I think they're doing this is a horrible job of making us care about these new characters. I think that Marvel's main focus should be establishing who our new main characters or Avengers are. Now, I do think that rushing into an Avengers movie after Infinity War and Endgame would be a very bad idea for the franchise. But what we can have and should have would be very few team-up movies. I think the old idea of having every new character introduced have their own origin story movie is a bad and outdated idea. Instead, Marvel should introduce multiple new characters in the same film to establish who our new heroes are moving forward. I mean, let's think about it. Do we really need, or does anyone even want, an Agatha show? Who is excited for this? Or what about the Echo show? This show is basically just clickbait for Daredevil fans, hoping that they will see Charlie Cox return. We do not need this. An example of this that I think was done pretty well recently by Marvel was in Wakanda Forever. This movie introduced Shuri as the new Black Panther and Ironheart as her own character. Now, I think Ironheart had a show that was once announced and then cancelled, but we do not need an Ironheart show. We just saw her in Wakanda Forever. Just establish her character and her character traits and move on with the storyline, have her progress throughout multiple other films. If she grows to be more powerful and popular, then give her her own show or movie. I think a great example of this is Bucky Barnes. He started off as the best friend to Steve in the first Avenger, and then throughout Cap's trilogy and other movies like Endgame and Infinity War, he had his own character arc and became a fan favorite after the Infinity Saga. Then, due to his popularity, he had his own TV show that followed that story. So if I got hired today to be put in charge of the MCU, the very first thing I would do is start making projects focused on specific characters and their power level. So what do I mean by their power level? Well, let's take a look at Marvel Comics and see what they do. In the comics, there are so many stories that are constantly going on at the same time, and one of the ways that they are separated, for lack of a better term, is by their power level. If I was in charge of the MCU, I would set up multiple different small teams or groups of characters based on their powers and abilities. This first group would focus on our street tier characters, these being characters like Spider-Man, Kate Bishop, Daredevil, or Bucky Barnes. You get the idea. The next group is what I would call world tier characters, examples of this being Captain America, Hulk, Black Panther, Ironheart, Cassie Lang, and Shang-Chi. Lastly, to keep it simple, I think I would call the third group either our cosmic or space tier characters. Examples of this being Doctor Strange, Fantastic Four, Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, and Thor. I truly think that if Marvel split up their stories into different segments, this would help establish the tone and type of story that they would be telling. Instead of every movie leading into the next, let's set up a long timeline based on these three tiers that I just talked about. Over the course of, let's say, 3 to 5 years, we can have multiple movies following our street tier characters, like Spider-Man fighting Kingpin, or Kate shutting down a local drug gang. Or maybe our world tier characters would be fighting the Flag Smashers. Do you guys remember them? Or the Skrulls. This wouldn't just be a one-time movie or a TV show or event, but it would be an arc over multiple different movies. Then, after a few years of this, we'll have a big threat like Doctor Doom show up or something, and all of our heroes from all three tiers have to come together to take them down. Then, after this movie, everyone would go their own way. If this were to happen, we would be able to follow our heroes go through their own specific journey and stories and be connected to their character in their own little world. This way, when the big things happen, they're actually important and they have an impact to the characters and the people around them. This way, not everything is an end-of-the-world event. One of the reasons why I loved Hawkeye so much is that it was so contained and small, and for flaws and all that this series had, it was just condensed down to Kate and Clint fighting a local gang. Also, something that has been brought up as criticism towards the MCU is that there is so much content. If we were able to break up these stories into 3 tiers or characters, then the audience could essentially just pick and choose what movies or shows they wanted to watch, and it wouldn't seem like there would be an overwhelming amount of content constantly being pumped out of the Marvel machine. For instance, if you only wanted to watch your street tier characters because you think they're more grounded, then you really wouldn't have to worry about the cosmic part of the universe. It's the same way the comic books work. If you only care about Spider-Man or Daredevil, chances are you're not going to pick up a Silver Surfer or Guardians of the Galaxy comic. Instead of pumping out so much content and throwing it at the wall to see what sticks and what fans like, we would focus on specific demographic geared towards specific types of fans and different types of characters, with all of this existing in the same universe. As of right now, the MCU seems to have no sense of direction on where the universe is going. Before the real-life drama and accusations of Jonathan Majors, there was very little in-universe evidence that pointed towards Kang being the next big bad. But especially after the accusation, Marvel seems to have been taking a step back from Kang, as they are now scrambling to find what to do with their next big bad and where to channel and point all of their new stories towards. From what I've seen, these talks have ranged anywhere from recasting Majors to shoehorning in Doctor Doom as the next big bad. Or I've even seen some talks of resetting or rebooting the whole universe as a whole. And I honestly think the latter idea of rebooting and resetting the universe is horrible. This would get rid of all of their fans and would be a perfect dropping off points for the fans that are already on the fence of keeping up with the universe. I honestly do not think that the MCU needs to work on building up their next big bad villain anytime soon. Instead, they need to work on building up their main characters and make the audience actually care about them. I mean, yes, in the Infinity Saga we had one post-credit scene of Thanos and one cameo in a Guardians movie, but other than that, we had multiple years of storytelling without a big bad being their main threat that the Avengers had to focus on. We need to take time to build up our relationship that we have with these characters. The same needs to be done now. I don't know why one of the biggest comic book events ever, besides Crisis on Infinite Earths, Secret Wars, is being pushed so hard right now. The only two ideas I can think of is that they want to capitalize on Avengers Endgame and make a more billion amount of money, or because Kevin and the brain trust at Marvel is truly running out of ideas. I mean, even the CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths event was a decade or so in the making. My main problem that I have with the current MCU right now is just the overall lack of direction. If Kang is the next big bad and will lead everything into Secret Wars in 2026 or whatever the release date is, then Kang needs to be in about every single project. We need to build him up as a true villain. Right now, the Kang we have got defeated by big ants. I mean, come on. In my opinion, I really do like these new characters that are supposed to be the new interests and new main characters. Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, new Captain America, Kate Bishop, Cassie Lang, Miss Marvel, Shang-Chi, Shuri's Black Panther. These are all great characters and so many great stories can be told with them. But mine and a lot of other people's problems with these characters is that we haven't seen enough of them yet, and that leaves us uninterested with the characters. We have our new heroes, but almost none of them have interacted with each other, and now we're supposed to care about what happens when they all group up together to take on Kang? Yeah, right. Out of all the projects that have been released post-Endgame, only a few honestly stand out to me, those being Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and Loki. If Marvel wants to keep their franchise alive, number one, they need to keep making great hits like that, but they also need to keep audience members invested, and I think the way they do this is to slow things down. Focus on the more smaller and intimate stories with these characters, and after we grow to love them over a few years, then we can throw in big bads like Kang and mix up and cause some serious problems. The reason I believe Loki was such a hit, even though yes, it is a multiverse story technically, is that it was intimate. It stayed and followed the same group of characters over an amount of time and didn't involve a whole lot of other stuff. It just focused on specific characters. Let's do that over the course of a few years with multiple movies over different characters. Now look, I love the MCU, and I've loved it ever since I've heard Yinsen's speech to Tony all the way back in that cave in 2008. Some of my favorite movie theater experiences are Thor landing in Wakanda, the whole third act of Avengers Endgame, and Spider-Man No Way Home. All of these movies came from the MCU, and it truly breaks my heart to see what the franchise has become and how far from grace it has fallen. Recently, I saw that an announcement was made that Marvel would slow down their project development, and that they would focus on the quality of these projects and not just the quantity that they can push out of the Marvel slot machine. And after seeing that Deadpool 3 is the only Marvel movie scheduled to release next year in 2024, I truly hope this is the decision that Marvel is going to take. So let me know what you guys think. What do you think the reason is the MCU isn't what it used to be? What do you guys think you would do differently if you were in charge of the franchise? And do you think that the MCU can even recover from the mistakes that they've made? I had a whole lot of fun making this video, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching my videos and continuing to support the channel. It truly means so much to me. I love hearing your feedback and having these types of conversation with you guys, and so I have no intent on stopping anytime soon. The responses to my past few videos have been amazing, and I truly cannot thank you guys enough. Thank you so much. And as always, let me know what type of videos you guys would like to see from me in the future. Take care. Bye.